the luck of appearing before this committee for the second time in 2 years. We are a committee of the National Assembly, constitutionally and statutorily mandated to conduct hearings on suitability of persons nominated by His Excellency the President to hold offices of cabinet secretaries. I'm the chairman of this committee. On my right is the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Gladys Bose. On my left is our Deputy Clerk, Jeremiah Ndombi. I'll invite members of the committee to introduce themselves for the record, starting with Honorable Naisula.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
Junet Mohamed, Suna East.
Nelson Koech, Belgut.
David Kosing, Poko South.
Gikaria David, Nakuru Town East.
And Mase Mary, Deso South.
George Gitonga Murugara, Tharaka Nithi.
Owen Baya, Kilifi North.
Robert Mui, MP Kadiani.
Stephen Mule, MP Matungulu.
Dido Raso, Saku.
Abdi Shurie, Balambala.
Mishimboko Likoni.
Rehab Mukami, Nyeri.
And I'm Kaleba Misaboti.
Honorable, Mr. Davis Chirchir, we'll start in earnest with the job ahead of us. First, you'll be sworn in because you'll testify on oath. Once we do that, you give your original documents to the sergeant to give to the clerk to cross-check with what we have to see if they are corresponding. So you may be upstanding. You have an option to swear on the Bible or the Quran, depending on your faith. Bible?
I, Davis Kimutai Chirchir, do swear that the evidence I shall give before this committee on the matter under its consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Thank you.
You may take your seats and sign the oath. Yes, Mr. Chirchir, for purpose of these proceedings, many members will be referring to you as nominee because that's what you are. I'll invite you to give us a brief introduction of yourself, your name, educational background, working experience, key competences that make you think and feel suitable for the appointment to cabinet. 5 minutes at the very most.
Thank you again, Chairman, Speaker, and honorable members. Nice to be here, and my initial gratitude to the President for nominating me to this position of Cabinet Secretary, Roads and Transport. Mr. Chairman, let me fast forward. I graduated in the year 1985 with a degree in physics and computer science from the University of Nairobi, and thereafter went into telecommunication industry, where I joined Kenya Post and Telecommunications and worked as a teletraffic engineer after a 9-month course at the then Central Training School, where I learned the intricacy of managing traffic going into the various routes across the whole world, dimensioning, congestion and things like that. Subsequently, I did rise in that position to the level of general manager, where I managed the ICT, Information, Communication, and Technology. And in the nascent period of liberalization, I managed the divestiture and liberalization of telecommunication as a change manager, where we did at that time the communication authorities, laws and regulations that spinned off what is now the Communication Authority, which is the regulator in the telecoms industry, spinned off Postal Corporation and Telecoms Kenya, and issued the various licenses to Safaricom and Celtel at that time. Something that then catapulted the growth of telecommunication in what became competitive and very competitive from the monopolistic management of telecommunication at that time done by Kenya Post and Telecommunications. I later on moved on, honorable members, chairman, as commissioner, where I worked in the interim electoral commission. Soon after the challenge that this country faced during the post-election, I came in as one of the electoral commissioners, where I spearheaded various reforms, processes that built confidence that had been totally destroyed in the electoral process, and where Kenyans at that time did not believe in exercising their democratic right through the vote or the ballot. We built system at one time, chairman, honorable members, the Electoral Commission at that time was the most trusted organization in Kenya, ahead of the media and of course ahead of parliament at that time. Honorable members, after the term of reform, which also catapulted the promulgation of the new constitution, where we ran the referendum in the year 2010, we were part of crafting Chapter 7 of the constitution, which today really brings out the electoral process, management of the credibility of the vote, to the extent that when the ballots are counted at the polling station and transmitted to the central tallying center, it doesn't matter what you do at the central tallying center, because the results would have been announced in each and every of the 22,000 plus polling centers in the country, with the technology that pushes them to the cloud today, and everybody participates in the counting. Even when we've had the results we had in 2 years, where the difference between the winning party and the losing party was 60,000, we were able to come out of the electoral process with acceptance of those electoral results. In the year 2012, I had a stench of going close to politics when I became the Secretary General of the then party URP, where we worked with a number of leadership to form government, and I then thereafter was nominated and subsequently appointed to the position of Cabinet Secretary, Energy and Petroleum, a role I did work on for 2 years before a list of shame was placed to Parliament, and I was one of them, and of course several members of Parliament, and we went through the due process, and we got out of it over time, but not before some of our careers were unnecessarily tainted because of the procedure that was adopted at that time. Honorable members, I have walked the journey, and I come here today, rather 2022 again. I was nominated and appointed after the Kenya Kwanza won to this position that I've been nominated to. I was nominated to the position of Cabinet Secretary, Energy and Petroleum, and I did serve in that position until the 11th of July, when the entire cabinet was dismissed. Honorable members, I have done some significant work in my career, in my journey, in terms of creating and adding value to this economy, in building systems, and I have legacies which I do pride of today. And today I stand before you, I sit before you as a nominee for CS, roads, and transport. Let me leave it at that for now, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, that will do. We'll now invite members to file questions to you, starting with the Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to question Mr. Davis Chirchir, the nominee, on where he served before, his immediate former position as Minister of Energy, and also to question him on where he's going, which is the Ministry of Transport. So, Mr. Chirchir, you are at the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. You know very well that one of the biggest complaints Kenyans had was that the cost of energy, that is petroleum products and power, was extremely high. I think then we'd be interested in knowing what are some of the interventions that you made during your tenure to try and mitigate this. Then where you're going now to the Ministry of Transport, where two things that are really big that are being spoken about in that particular ministry. One is that the cost of building our roads. I know that before the finance bill collapsed, the discussions were that to do the entire road network, almost ₦1 trillion is required or more. And then also there's a lot of unpaid bills. That's some of the issues that were brought before Parliament for contractors who have built our roads. So what are the interventions you will take if you're confirmed for this position of Minister of Transport? Are you going to look at joint concession roads and so on? And lastly, on the big elephant in the room, Kenya Airways. Now that you're going to the Ministry of Transport, if confirmed, that will be also an issue we'll deal with. Kenyans would like to know how you intend to deal with Kenya Airways. Are we going to put more money and seeing losses, or is there a way of dealing with it, or should it just be sold? We are interested in knowing what your views are on that. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Nominee, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Gladys Boshole. Good question on what we've done and achieved as a country to bring down the cost of energy to where it is today. Let me start, Honorable Chair, by saying when I checked last, and then because of the concern when our President was going to the space to talk to the Gen Zs, I did check the challenge of power and what we need to do to be able to address the cost of doing business in this economy. Cost of energy is one of the most insignificant contributor to the cost of doing business. In industry of energy, in production contributes to up to 30 to 40%. And therefore, a country cannot be competitive if the cost of energy as a unit cost of production is significantly high. Chairman, honorable members, the energy portfolio is a very interesting area when I consider to where I'm going. A very structured area. We have a tool we call Least Cost Power Development Plan, which we've just signed off the 2024-2043 Least Cost Power Development Plan, which articulates the building blocks and how to match demand and supply. What happens, Honorable Chair and members, is that every bit and piece of energy that is generated is paid for by the customers, whether we sell it or not. So we don't generate power which you don't need. We have to ensure that we match the demand and the supply. And because the demand side can grow suddenly while the supply is built over 3 years, there's got to be very good planning. As we speak now, we are planning for power for Kenya for 2027, 28. In fact, those are the power plants which we are currently building. in Olkaria, in Kiambere, Kamburu, Sola, and so on and so forth, in Meningai, in Nakuru. We are currently building power plants. And what we did to basically get down to the question to address the cost of energy is to really ensure that the energy mix in generation, we do generate power from solar, from wind, from geothermal. Those are the three cheapest cost of generation, including, of course, hydro. And the most expensive generation is from thermal. And during times of drought, we run thermal more because the hydrology would be low. Because of the hydrology having been good in the past 1 year, we've had a lot of water, so we are running our Kiambere, Kindaruma, Gitaru, Cascade fairly well. But more importantly, the mix to ensure that we do not dispatch the expensive power when we don't need to is a very important component in managing the cost of power. One of the profound things we've done, Chairman and honorable members, which I might even call legacy, is switching off a power plant called Moroni, which is very expensive. It dispatches power at about 70 shillings per kilowatt hour. So Moroni GT, which is somewhere between Kisumu and Moroni. We all know where Moroni is. We have also switched off a power plant called Kipev 1. Moroni generates 60 megawatts. Kipev 1 generates 74 megawatts. At end of life, it has reached end of life, and we switched it off. And likewise, we've switched off 76.4 megawatts in Kipev 2. These power plants alone, Chair, if to contextualize, it generates 210 megawatts, dispatches about 15% because it's only used for picking, but the cost to the economy is about 10 billion Kenya shillings annually, when it is dispatching at 15%. If we have to dispatch more because of not obeying the order of merit of economic order of merit of supply, the bill would go from 10, 15 to 20 billion. Those power plants are down. The promoters of these power plants have been through this town to see everybody to try and bring them back. But because of the cost of doing business, it doesn't make sense to give them another lease of life. The challenge of climate change commitment, which we have made for 2030 to be 100% green, is another one which has catapulted this country and placed it in a very, very good pedestal. So, Chair, let me end that initial question by saying it will be of interest for members when you write the report to check and confirm that in the month of July, both cost of electricity and cost of petroleum products is the lowest in the country in the last 15 months. And it takes a real difficult position to sustain those power plants not to be switched off, not to be switched on again because of what I've said, the cost of doing business and the climate change commitment which we've made for this country. As regarding some of the things that I will do where I'm going in the roads and transport, Honorable Chairman, honorable members, it's an interesting area. It will be interesting to note that where I come from in energy or where I've served twice before, if we have one pending bill, it is due to a court case. We don't have any pending bills. I have quickly checked the road sector with a pending bills of about 166 billion, with unfunded commitments of about 1 trillion, some with the Chinese government and some with the local contractors, unfunded. And I don't know, I've also checked, Honorable Chairman, that the exchequer support that costs roads annually is about 55 billion. So if that continues, it will take us in excess of 20 years to finance what has been committed today, leave alone financing the pending bills, which sits at 94 billion with an interest, forex gains and what have you of adding up to about 166. And therefore, there is a job to be done Chairman, members, and I think we'll have to work together given the challenge that we have a finance bill that has not gone through. Luckily, where I come again, maybe to give a bit of hope to where I'm going to, is that all energy works is off balance sheet. And it will be of interest to members and, of course, the Honorable Chairman to note that energy deals with a budget of about $10 billion annually, all off balance sheet. And I sit here to basically pronounce that we are working to deliver the cheapest cost of electricity and today the cheapest cost of petroleum products in the country, albeit with no budget support, because all this is private capital, off balance sheet. We do not have to work on the treasury balance sheet. Otherwise, we'll need 20 years, Chairman, to be able to fulfill those commitments that we have signed onto and that we have to deliver because they are contractual. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, if you allow me.
Yes.
If you allow me, just to follow up on what Davis is talking about, 1 trillion into commitment of 160 billion in debt. It looks really grim, you know, like you will run away from the job. What is it that you will do to attract capital and actually to offset the 1 trillion and also to pay the bills? Because you have done it in energy. What will you do? Because we want to see hope. Kenyans want to see what is it that Davis will do to change the story. Thank
you. Yes, Davis, and you had not also touched on Kenya Airways question?
Through Chairman Owen, it is difficult. It's early in the day after nomination, but I think it's possible. I've said we work off balance sheet in energy. And when you, Chairman, you have term sheets which stipulate that maybe the cost of constructing a kilometer of road or the cost of generating geothermal, if you are coming in as a private investor, should not be indicative tariffs. We gazette indicative tariffs through EPRA, where when you're generating power, we tell you if you're coming in, we're not signing if your tariff is above 6 cents US. So I think we should really be looking at frameworks like if you are coming in, we cannot sign a contract if you are building a road beyond 100 million Kenya shillings per kilometer, so that we don't get into commitments of trying to build a road for 500 million Kenya shillings per kilometer. And so even as you walk in to do your initial study, you don't spend time to push us to a commitment where we are building a kilometer for the price of 5, 6, 10 kilometers. We will need to look at, more importantly, how to work off balance sheet. When I say that $10 billion, it sounds crazy. But petroleum alone, which comes into Kenya today through the OTS or the current G2G at about 740,000 metric tons annually, cost the economy some 6 trillion, crazy numbers. I mean, I just need to refer, 6 billion US dollars annually. And we do not have a time when the country is dry. Even at the peak time of the tightened monetary policy, when the Fed went into 5.5% interest and the interbank rates were crazy and there were no dollars in the industry, we did not run dry because we do not have to rely on the treasury to help us to bring these necessary products to drive the economy. So we'll be looking together, honorable members, at how to resolve this challenge. It's a big challenge. Raising a trillion Kenya shillings to build those kilometers of roads where commitment has been given. Having to pay the 160, 170 billion Kenya shillings on bending bills and growing by the hour, growing by the day, is something that we can look at what you would call securitization of the little money we have in the road maintenance levy, and borrowing a bullet today and paying with an interest over 10 years, and we should be able to finance. As to whether those are acceptable, being in an IMF program today is something that we'll need to sit down together and resolve, because it's a commitment this country has made. We'll have to address it. Thank you.
Point of information, Speaker. Small point of information.
Yes,
this might be beneficial to the nominee, and I think I agree with him. The proposal of getting resources securitized by our instruments, which is, for example, fuel levy. In last Parliament, when I was chairing transport, Honorable Speaker, we actually proposed, and we have actually a legal instrument. We have the law, so which means the nominee might want to exploit that opportunity, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Yes, the Deputy Speaker is saying you have not touched on her question on Kenya Airways.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Kenya Airways is another interesting investment, which you do know that we all love to have our Kenya Airways, and I think we should continue to have it and promote it. Kenya Airways, as we speak, and for the short time I've been preparing to appear before you, I do see Kenya Airways running a system that needs a lot of support, and where the Kenya government, I think to date, has given support to the tune of 600 billion Kenya shillings to be able to stay afloat, given the negative cash capital, negative cash capital that they are operating in. Chair, I think the reforms at Kenya Airways, starting from the need a lot of communication and ownership by the employees of Kenya Airways, and we're going to sit down and get them to understand that it's a problem that must be sorted out internally. The CBA, or the negotiated terms, and holding on to them when somebody else is having to pay your bill, is something that we'll really need to sit down as an enterprise, as Kenya Airways, and address. I've also seen Kenya Airways having a portfolio of flights that may not be suitable in the embryo, which do not have the kind of bottom belly to carry the kind of luggage. And therefore, the first option when you are flying out or flying in, because of the way we carry 20, 30, 40 kilos, is not to fly Kenya Airways. So it is self-defeating to be having the highest fleet of about 13 embryos aeroplanes in this fleet, and therefore giving us an uncompetitive advantage in terms of customers having to choose alternative flights when they might have actually wanted to fly Kenya Airways. Chairman, I do note that Kenya Airways in the past 2023 accounts had an operating profit of about 10 billion. We'll need to look at what they are doing right and build on that. Possibly take out some cost out of the system, because there are costs which we really must remove to be able to allow them to come out of the challenge they currently face. But more importantly, if you look at the 600 billion government support in Kenya Airways, and the fact that Kenya Airways today, the Kenya government owns about 49%, 48.9% of Kenya Airways, it will be, if we really kind of allowed government to pick more shares out of that 600 billion, government will go to a shareholding structure of about 80%. I think we need to bring in a partner. If you see successful hotels, allow me to use hotels, Chair, where they build networks around the world to be able to push their customers into their networks, we need to build a network of a supporting airline that we can leverage on to be able to bring Kenya Airways out of the current challenge they face, but more importantly, to support tourism, support our flower industry, support our green produce in avocado, the things we export because of the perishability very quickly into the external markets, and where the inflows in foreign currency is so significant. So we need to work on Kenya Airways. Thank you, Chair.
That will do. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
CS nominee, we just start maybe from where you stopped on Kenya Airways and ask you, we have listened to such stories. I think I've listened to those stories about KQ since I joined Parliament 12 years ago. I just want to be direct. Are we going to listen to that story from the next nominee after you? Or how long should you be approved? Will you commit to the people of Kenya that you can be able to sort out the problems of Kenya Airways? Because as you say, it's true, they are on operating profit, but when you factor in their financing costs, then they make huge losses. And then the story goes on and on and on and on forever. So you may need to tell us whether you truly mean business. Should you be approved, and how long it will take us to see a Kenya Airways that is truly functional, profitable, and is giving value to the people of Kenya. Because even nationalizing it, if you do not give value to the people of Kenya, then it may not make sense. That being so, you have been Cabinet Secretary for Energy, and you were at the time we did the famous G2G in the oil industry. You tell us how beneficial that G2G was. Was it beneficial to the country, or was it on net terms a loss to us in terms of the oil prices and all the other issues that Kenyans raise about the G2G? And more so in view of the current conversation. You've seen Kenyans online saying that the airport has been sold. Far from it, from what we hear, and negotiations on PPP framework with the Adani Airport Holdings Limited. Are you the man to run this PPP with Adani or any other interested private equity partner that may come in? And can the people of Kenya trust that you will do it for value, for good value to the people of Kenya, if G2G was not of value to the people of Kenya? I say if, because to be consequential to your first answer on G2G on oil. And maybe you would take a bit of time to tell us what you have been able to dig in your briefs from the ministry on this Adani Airport Holdings PPP engagements, the engagements that are there. Lastly, just to add to what Honorable Kosing was saying, yes, the framework is there for leveraging on the RMLF funds on roads, but as you rightly say, with the programs that we are on and our debt ceiling, that may not be an option, a viable option for now, so you may need to really think out of the box in terms of funding our roads projects. Thank you.
Davis, try and compress the answers.
Thank you, Chair. I think KQ is, it needs, like I said, there'll be quick wins. There'll be the low-hanging fruits, like I said. I would like to sit down with the staffers and address this challenge in KQ, which I could easily call the low-hanging fruits, but which has really been a major pain in KQ, the industrial relations. We need to have ownership of the entire management and staff of KQ to understand the challenge and that we need to get out of it, because somebody else cannot be paying for our lunch and we just have the lunch. Those are some of the quick wins. Some of the more difficult things which I think have been addressed are those expensive leases, on the 7-7 leases, where the cost and the revenues are really challenged. And again, we are having to rely on government to pay on behalf. But as it were, KQ, like we'll all have to agree, from an aviation perspective, is a very strategic asset. So it will be one thing to sit down and first things first. What are the low-hanging fruits? What do we need to address? And what kind of ownership? So it's a leadership issue. We really need to address that. One thing which I'm going to put alongside KQ, G2G, and Adani, and I did prepare the challenge that the country faced in the last 4 weeks in terms of how we work, is the aspect of communication and carrying the Kenyans together with us. Article 35 of the Constitution, and I did make a record of that so that I don't fumble around, where every citizen has the right to information. And in Article 69, it talks to public participation in the environment. In 118, it talks to public participation in facilitating public participation in involvement and in the legislative process, public participation in the National Assembly and in the county government in Article 196. And in the finance area, Chapter 12, it talks about there shall be openness and accountability, including participation in financial matters. Chair, I think as government, we feel like information can only be given out when we have been pushed to give information. The public participation is articulated in the Constitution and in the act that has been in Parliament to basically actualize how public participation should be conducted, and which is causing a pain today, including the ruling that we just had the previous day, is something that we need to carry Kenyans as we do some of the things we do, like in Adani, in Kenya Airways, or in G2G. Because G2G was a fairly complex and a quick solution required to address the challenge of the time. But we're trying to explain today, even to members of Parliament, to understand something that was built over a period of 4 months. If we carried everybody along in public participation so that they understand every step as we go forward, we wouldn't be facing the kind of challenges we are facing today. So there'll be need to inculcate public participation from inception as we carry the programs forward, so that we are together with Kenyans at every stage. Of course, how that is done is something that we'll need to really work on. So really, I think we really need to address the challenge that we find ourselves doing what we believe is right for the country, but the population do not quite understand because we did not carry them along the whole journey. We came out of COVID at a time when the Ukraine war was a big challenge, and the inflation rate was soaring at a high of 9%, including in the US and Canada. A very tight monetary policy running even today at 5.25% to 5.5%. And the dollars would rather be in soft trading as opposed to trading with risk. Everybody was basically earning more money, taking their money to the bank. And a situation which did not only affect Kenya, in fact, in the tea industry, we were not selling our tea because there was no dollars out there. It was a global crisis. Let me then answer the point.
Avoid the temptation to give a lecture.
Yeah.
Answer questions.
Agreed. Yes. The G2G chair was brought in to forestall the challenge of unavailability of the US dollars in the industry. And we did build a very quick solution to ensure that the country would not run dry. We could be able to purchase petroleum, pay Kenya shillings, on a deferred LCs, which would be confirmed by international AAA or what you would call investment grade banks over the local issued LCs, and be able to get the product very well. I think we have today brought in over 100 cargoes. We have in-account dollars in excess of $3 billion over this. And I think today, if not for G2G, like 22, MPs will recall carrying jerry cans around the country looking for fuel to run their campaigns because there were no dollars to buy petroleum products. As regarding Adani, so G2G was great. I think it is something, Chair, when there's time and I write my book, it will be one of my legacy delivery to this country. Adani.
You know, you're being guided by the chair to avoid giving lectures, because the straight answer was the dollar was at 160 something.
And
part of the benefits of that is
at 130 today. Thank you.
130 today.
Thank you.
Fuel prices, the prices they were trading at then, and what they would have gone.
With respect to Adani, Chair, we look at Adani. We'll need, like I opened by saying, public participation, provide information, have a framework in terms of what you would call term sheets, in terms of what is the correct return on investment when we are bringing a PPP. If we agree that the return on investment is 12 to 15% internal rate of return, if we agree on the debt equity ratio, we should be able to really get Kenyans to understand, get everybody to understand, is Adani a deal we should do? Is it going to help Kenya? Vis-a-vis what I just said, this is an off-balance sheet upgrade of Kenya Airports Authority. If we can't do it as a government, can we allow a private sector player to do it on reasonable but competitive cost or return on capital? Thank you, Chair.
Next.
Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by saying that and telling the nominee that I think, Mr. Nominee, the issue now that at hand that you need to explain to the vetting committee is that you are getting into a ministry that has a very high, huge pending bill that has no money essential for development of new roads. You need to tell us how you are going to turn around that. What vision, what do you think you will do that will turn around that? That's number one. And number two, in November 2023, no, I mean in 25th of August 2023, during your tenure as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum, the country experienced a national grid failure, you remember? And it affected many places, including the airport, including homes, hospitals, everywhere. And the then Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport took some decisions and reshuffled people at the airport and sacked some people. But on your side, nothing happened. What could be the reason and what could have caused the disruption or what could have caused the grid to collapse? And another thing I wanted to ask you is, you know, we are formed a new cabinet. We are vetting 22 members of parliament, members of the cabinet. And this is a broad-based government, as has been said by the president himself. But the effect of broad-based also is to have development in every part of the country. This country has suffered enough in the sense that there's skewed way of doing road constructions in the country. There are places like my neighbor here in Kikuyu, there is no road remaining, unless now we want to put overhead and overpasses and underground passes. And there are places where still there are issues of roads. What criteria will you come up with?
Mr. Speaker, you need to protect me from my colleague. He can't say there are no roads remaining in Kikuyu when there are actually no roads in Kikuyu.
You'll be protected.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ask your question.
Mr. Speaker, so I was asking, what criteria are you going to come up with so that roads net distribution is done in an equitable and fair manner? Lastly, there was a road that was supposed to be dualed from, I don't know, here, Kabete or somewhere in Nairobi here, all the way to Rironi, all the way to Mount Summit Junction. And that's where, as we go, every weekend, what is the status? There was an agreement with the French government, but it has never taken off. So, Mr. Nominee, those 4 issues, if you explain.
Yes, Davis.
Then you may get a good report from me.
Very quickly, for the unfortunate blackouts in the network, Chair, I do note we have had a number of blackouts which we have addressed and categorized into quick solution in short term, mid term, and long term. Whereas we have generated enough power because it is done by the private sector or off-government balance sheet. And the energy sector is totally unbundled in terms of generators, transmission, and offtake, or what you call the buyer market in KPLC. The transmission network is financed by the exchequer, through the exchequer. And with the inadequate financing of the transmission network, most of the challenges that we saw in the blackout was transmission in nature. Chair, we have 2 very specific challenges in Kisumu, Moroni, Chemosit, a network which links to Bomet, through Kigati to Awendo, Homa Bay and Awendo. And that transmission network gets overloaded. When a system is overloaded, it drips to secure itself, just like the circuit breakers in our house. When it sends a fault, it will drip. So the drip, due to an overload, became a challenge. We have seen secured funding to get an alternative routing to get more power from Olkaria through Narok, Bomet, Awendo, and Homa Bay. So that the contractor will be on site shortly. We got a funding from Africa Development Bank and address that challenge. The other challenge that has been dripping the country and where we occasionally, for those of us who live in that region, do pull out feeders. Pulling out a feeder is load shedding. And so a few areas would be load shedding to ensure that it doesn't drip the whole country while we build this network very quickly. We've had a challenge in Takwel, a place called Ortum, Kitale, where we did put some 3 solar plants called Alten, Selenkei, and what happened is those solar plants caused a network constraint. And so we've not been dispatching Takwel because of the take-or-pay challenge of delivery of power into the system. Chair, that has since been resolved. We have gotten the transformers into Otum. Otum is in some place in West Pokot there, and we've gotten the transformer to Kitale. And the network constraint or the congestion of having to transmit more power through a line has been resolved. We are also working on something called to be able to manage voltage stabilization. We are working on STATCOMs on the Ethiopia-Kenya line to be able to address the voltages so that we do not have this intermittence and a network disturbance which causes a blackout. And so those are being addressed. Unfortunately, they belong to Ketraco where they are addressed through the balance sheet, but that is being addressed, Chair. With regard to...
Point of order, Chairman.
Yes, Mary.
I have not heard him mention Busia and Kakamega because blackouts cut across. Actually, you cannot even put a business in Busia because you got persistent blackout. So mention something about Busia and Kakamega and Bungoma. Yeah.
Allow me, Chair.
Yes, Chirchir.
Chair, I should have possibly said west of Kenya.
Call me Speaker or Chairman, not
Chairman,
Chair.
Chairman, yes. This challenge is really characteristic of most of west of Kenya. You know, most of the generation is in the 7 Forks.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. Yeah. But with the construction of the line to carry power from Olkaria direct to west of Kenya, a very good capacity line, that problem will be a thing of the past. That's being done.
When will it be ready?
Another 18 months, but what we are currently doing, we have got mitigation. We've built a line from Sondu through Awendo to be able to deload Chemosit, Kigati. So there's a lot of work being done. And let me say this, Chair.
He's sitting on a chair.
I'm sitting on a chair. I'm not a chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Let me say this.
Yes.
Since I came to the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, we've been working on the critical projects which had been started rather than the appetite of starting new projects. These have been historical challenges. We are sorting them. Whoever comes, my colleague who comes to the office, there are ongoing projects as we speak today. We are accelerating them because of that challenge. In fact, to put lives to the number of load shedding, occasionally, on a day-to-day basis, we are load shedding up to 140 customers to be able to remove the overload on the line. So conscious of that, including hospitals, including industries, factories, the tea factories, conscious of that, Chair, we are working around the clock to ensure that we deliver this in the shortest possible time.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I'm not asking a question, but Mr. Speaker, looking at the time, only 3 people have asked questions, and we're almost an hour. So if the nominee, please, could just be short and precise.
Going forward, nominee, when you ask a question, just answer it. Are you selling Kenya Airways? No. Are you pumping in more money? Yes or no. Then we make progress. Let me now start from this side.
Why don't I finish Jeanette? And I'll just 30 seconds. Rironi Molo was concession to the French company. I think the pricing, again, is what I called a term sheet. We'll relook at that and be able to bring the cost right, possibly do what we must do to deload or congest that road. It's a matter of priority to be able to move traffic to west of Kenya. The road construction, what criteria will we use? Chairman, I introduced my formative life in traffic engineering, and we'll need to do more of really ensuring we look at traffic, we look at opening new areas for economic purposes. Think about the Lapset. It is a new development corridor. You may not need traffic to open Lapset because we need to shift development to a new development corridor. And so we'll use all those kind of clustered frameworks to be able to open this country, working with the members of parliament, like I've worked with most of you on the last mile, to be able to open this country. Thank you.
Good. Let me start from Robert. Then we go to Mary, Amisi, Mule, then we come back this side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And please ask one question each. Don't make no preamble to your questions.
Speaker, there are very critical things I needed to know from the nominee. So first and foremost, the road maintenance levy that was introduced recently from 18 shillings to 25 shillings by EPRA was done, in my opinion, without reference to the National Assembly. And despite also the fact that Kenyans, when there was public participation, they said no. I would like to hear your opinion about that. And there's some clarity on the G2G deal. Why was National Oil Corporation of Kenya involved? Because there is a belief that it wasn't. And then on the same deal, when you say that you're paying for fuel in Kenyan shillings, I want clarity because I am very well aware that Kenyan shillings are not legal tender outside this country, outside the region. So how is it that you are able to pay for, because that has always been the comment, that we are paying for fuel in Kenyan shillings. How would UAE or other countries out there receive Kenyan shillings as legal tender? And finally, on the transport sector, which you're being nominated to, how will you deal with the three critical things? One, road safety. Two, the menace of traffic police on the roads. And finally, of course, the high cost of transportation. Thank you, Chairman.
Swali moja.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I would like to ask Davis, our nominee, this one question. The north of Kenya, that is Malindi, Tana River, Lamu, those areas are very productive, but the productivity has been hindered because of the lack of the airport in Malindi, a good airport. This has been a question that every government has not wanted to face, that we must, Malindi is decaying because of the lack of the airport. Over $100 billion investments in Malindi, they are coming down because of the lack of the airport. You're a clever man, that I know because I've worked with you before, and I want to declare my interest. What will you do really to solve this problem of the airport? Secondly, the open sky question. We are protective of KQ, yes. But again, we also need to open this country to more investment by allowing other airlines to come in. If Ethiopian airline can fly to tourists from Addis Ababa to Nairobi, then the airport, the tourist is stranded there waiting for Jumbo Jet to fly to Malindi at 7 in the evening, and they arrived at 7 in the morning. Why would you do that and kill tourism just because we want to protect KQ? What will you do to solve these two key legendary issues, the Malindi airport and the open sky policy in this country? Thank you.
Answer those three questions, two from Robert, one from...
Chairman, the issue of road maintenance levy, which granted has done very well, because you'll notice that our highways are very well maintained, is a good thing in terms of the ratio that I've seen on how it gets to Kena, Kura for the urban, and Kera. And we'll need to look at whether we need to redimension and get some savings. Are we over-providing? Are those percentage distribution frameworks supporting? Because whereas the road development does not have any revenue because we rely on the exchequer support. Can we be able to, in line with what I said earlier, having to get more of off-balance sheet road development in an area where we'll be together looking at a policy on tolling, road tolling, so that you pay as you use. You see the expressway is fairly popular, and yet people are willing to pay today rather than really pay when they are not using. So we look at that together, honorable members. Ongoing, we will really, because of the 7 shillings additional, that was, like you said, hurriedly, without coming to the House, we'll need to look at that together. I think it's topical. I don't know whether it is in court as we speak, but it's an area where we socialize Kenyans, like I said, from the word go, and understood the need to be able to open up this country for economic development. It's one thing that could help us in working on securitization and really coming into your constituency in Eastern Province and opening up that region for development. So we look at that together because it's a very topical issue as we speak today. NOC wasn't considered because NOC was not able to play in this space. The space belonged to the international oil marketing companies who are able to work with AAA or investment grade banks to be able to give us products on deferred LCs for 6 months. At the time when we did this, NOC has been having a very big challenge, and in fact we are commercializing NOC at the moment, Mr. Speaker. It ran itself into a problem when they brought 2 cargoes that disappeared in the high seas in 2011, and they have been crumbling with a debt of 8 billion, and therefore, Chair, it's when you really try to really pick up what you cannot manage. So the international oil marketing companies were allowed to appoint local OMCs companies who had a relationship or accounts with them to be able to offtake the products in Kenya, because the trade finance is a bit of a complex area, because this is really employing trade finance to be able to take products today and pay 6 months later. Pay in Kenya shillings today. In the meantime, because the dollar accumulation was very tight, buy the dollars in a structured form where KCB, Standard Chartered are the only people going to the market through central bank, in a very structured way. We had a committee called TRIMCOM, Treasury Risk Investment and Management Committee, which meets every Wednesday. And therefore, we had a very structured way of taking the shillings and going to the market from the 120th day to buy in a structured way, so that we also removed the interbank rate, which had gone off completely. So NOC was not included. They could not play in this space. Regarding the final question from
Speaker.
Malindi Airport.
Malindi Airport.
How did the cargo disappear? That is the question. The dollar. That's what he's asking, the chairman.
Let me mention that. Let me come to that. The traffic, the road safety, traffic issues, and high cost of transportation is something with the technology today. Let me just say, I'm aware that technology is being employed to be able to have an intelligent system with cameras on the road, with an electronic wallet that gives you points for good driving, removes points, and be able to eventually even cancel, with a kind of fine system that can be operated in this electronic space. We should be able to address. I know there's a project which is already going on. We'll need to review that and confirm. There is an ITS, Intelligent Traffic Management System, which is going to be addressing offenders at junctions and things like that. We look at that together and implement that quickly. Road transportation or transportation then becomes expensive because of the challenges inherent from the cost of fuel, the cost of congestion, and then so on and so forth. Traffic management becomes very important today, where even with Google Maps, you are able to choose the route without traffic. There is no reason why when I'm coming from Bomet, Honorable Speaker, I have to drive into a dead traffic end and slip over in my Mayu escarpment, when I could have actually, because of traffic management technology, just go out through Naivasha and get to Nairobi in 2 hours, and instead end up slipping in the escarpment, and yet the technology is there today. So we'll implement those aspects of traffic management together. Malindi, Mheshimiwa Owen, I know Malindi is passionate. It's a tourist destination. We'll need to sit down and work together and see, like, from a traffic perspective, tourists would rather be flying than going on that narrow road into Malindi. And there's no reason why we cannot sit together quickly and dimension upgrade of Malindi and be able to attract more traffic. But more importantly, look at how commercial that should be so that we do not get into the kind of bending bills that we talk about. Open sky question vis-a-vis the reciprocal requirement as per regulations is something we need to look at together. I do agree with you, but it's happening, it's bound to be happening at a very hard time for KQ when they are struggling. So let's see, do we push KQ to improve as we open our skies with those reciprocal arrangements? Because even if we did a reciprocal arrangement and our flights to those destinations are the Embraer, which are not able, they don't have the belly stuff to carry enough luggage. So we really need to work very quickly to see whether we need KQ to come up, and I think we do, and be able to work on the open sky policy with, more importantly, the reciprocal arrangements. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Honour Davis, you've told us about your attempts to equalize provision of electricity in the country, and especially through the last mile. That's only 2 years, so it stands to be seen whether really there is anything feasible in that area. But now you go to roads. And as stated, there's great inequality in terms of road network in the country, and especially with what are known as stored projects, the stored roads. If I give you an example of Tharaka Nithi County, we have 3 roads started 10 years ago in 2014, and up to now we are still grappling with their completion. Will it be your policy that you will actually dedicate resources as a matter of urgency to completion of stored roads and projects so that at least the network can, to some extent, be equalized?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Abdul Rahim Daud, MP for North Imenti, and I want to say I'm in the Committee of Transport, so I won't ask him transport questions. CS Nomniee, while you were in the energy sector, energy ministry, did you look at the fuel, the one we were told by Honorable Kiraito during his time as minister, that we had oil in Turkana? And if you did, why aren't we utilizing the refinery we had in Mombasa so that at least fuel could be cheaper than what it is right now? Because we are at the mercy of the big oil operators. Lastly, regarding, I don't know if I will ask, roads, they are the Mau Mau roads, you have heard of them. But those Mau Mau roads do not pass through the whole of central Kenya. It is just a portion of central Kenya. Will you think of extending it to the other part, Mount Kenya East as well? Because we do not have the Mau Mau roads. And we had Mau Mau even in Meru, Tharaka Nithi, and Embu. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with George Murungaru regarding the North Imenti and the concern of stall projects in Tharaka Nithi. We do not have an option. We don't have an option. We've signed contracts. The interest will be piling. The bending bills will be piling. Unless we have a way of exiting, which I think they were considered before they were contracted, we'll have to look for funding solutions. And Chair, like I said, like the G2G, we have to think out of the box. Chairman. Regarding, so we don't have an option. We have to work on those roads.
Chirchir, what these members are asking you is, assuming you get favor from this committee, and you are recommended to be appointed to that ministry. What plans do you have to tackle pending bills, other than complain about pending bills? I think that is what members want you to tell us. What innovative ideas do you have when you get into office, if you get there, to get pending bills out of the way and start embarking on new projects or stalled projects?
Let me, and very fluid, like David Kosing did raise, we need to look at securitization of the little revenues that we have in the road maintenance levy. Number two, why I said it's very fluid, depending on whether we are able to pull through the debate of the additional, that could be a very good area to fully securitize. If we securitize 7 shillings, and which works to 31 billion annually, and if you were to securitize that for like 10 years, that would be 310 billion. We can do a bullet payment on a pricing of 300 against maybe 250 billion because of the cost of money, and be able to address that challenge today. But again, like I said, it is fluid. We need to sit down together and look at the options. There'll be a number of options that we can look at together. Absolutely. As regarding Rahim's question on electricity, you do know that I had, when sitting in the Ministry of Energy chair, I sat with the county leadership from the various counties in many breakfast meetings, and Rahim happened to have been in the breakfast meeting for. Chair will need to look at how to harmonize the redistribution of resources to address opening. I did write to every member of parliament in May last year, Chair, to look at how many primary schools or public institutions were not electrified in each constituency. With that database, we've been able to allocate money subject to meeting the social obligation of public institutions, so that if you are 100% electrified, Chair, why wouldn't we give more money to Rahim or to George in Tharakanithi to be able to equalize and bring the whole country into an equal footing in terms of electricity or energy for all? We'll do similar frameworks in roads. We'll sit down together and map what we need to do to be able to really push the country forward. As regarding exploration of tallow and the discovery of oil in Kenya, we are at a phase called field development plan. We have a big field development plan that should be coming to Parliament. It is being reviewed by the regulator. Once the regulator reviews, it will go to the minister, and within 30 days, the minister will bring it to Parliament. And what the field development plan does, Mr. Speaker, Chairman, is it looks at moving the concessionaire from exploration to production in line with the production sharing contract. It looks at the financial ability for them to build the system to produce the crude oil. It looks at the technical capacity of that farm. So currently we are reviewing the field development plan, and it will be coming to Parliament in due course to see whether we can move from exploration to production, because there is the risk of, if not properly done, moving the concessionaire and staying in production for the next 10 years. So we are looking at the financial and technical capacity to be able to do that. Refinery becomes an option in terms of bankability of the project as to whether we export crude through a pipeline out of Lamu or Mombasa, or whether we refine. And therefore, that could help us to utilize the refinery in Mombasa that we closed some times back. Mau Mau roads, we can look at that together, Chairman. It is too early, but suddenly we'll work to be able to dimension what we need to do together. Thank you.
Mary?
Thank you, Chairman. Nomniee, in the collapsed finance bill, there was an allocation of 50 million for electricity distribution, 50 million for each constituency. I'm wondering whether you're going to carry that approach along with you to the Ministry of Transport, so that we have that equitable distribution of resources, so that if you decide it is 50 kilometers per county, we all benefit from 50 kilometers per county, so that regions like Busia can also get a road, a tarmac road, from Butula all the way to Amukura and Teso South, and other counties. Secondly, Nairobi Expressway was constructed to ease congestion along the highway. But sometime in January, the toll charges were increased. This defeats the purpose for which it was intended. Because now how do you reap from, how do you encourage people to use the highway and also benefit from economies of scale? What are your thoughts on the kind of charges that are being levied on the expressway? Thank you.
Amisi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You asked for one question, but I beg you, give me two, because the last one is important for me. The first,
start with the important one.
The very, very important one, Mr. Speaker, is that I come from a constituency that do not have even a single kilometer of road of bitumen standard, and it has been like that since time immemorial. Mostly they say because it has been represented by opposition leaders, but I doubt. 20 months ago, we were here with the predecessor of this ministry. And I did ask him the same question, and he said that in 100 days, I will see miracles. Now it's 20 months down the line. I want to ask you, when do I expect to see at least a kilometer of bitumen in my constituency? And it's not just my constituency, Mr. Speaker. It is a program that needs to check that there is equal distribution of road network across the country, irrespective of where the region falls, whether it's in opposition or in the government. But there must be a clear national rationalization program of all constituencies, so that if a kilometer is built in Mombasa, there is another kilometer built in Kitale. We must have that, so that the constituents don't think that it is a failure of a member of parliament, when it is actually the failure of proper program of the ministry. And then the question I wanted to ask, Mr. Speaker, is that our roads and infrastructure are majorly World Bank funded, and IMF, International Monetary Fund. Mr. Speaker, World Bank were financial institutions that started to reconstruct Europe after the war on Europe, after the World War II. There were proper development in Europe before. The purpose of World Bank was to reconstruct Europe after the World War II, including Japan and other Asian countries. Now, it is 80 years since the World War II ended. We are still reconstructing. The purpose of that World Bank is not commensurate to the issues of the global South. In this country, we've never had war, whether it's local, global, even the Mau Mau did not destroy any road. We cannot talk about a fund that used to reconstruct, coming to develop an underdevelopment. So, Minister, you are going to a ministry that is heavily, we know the roads network is capital intensive, but you are going to a ministry that is going to be heavily dependent on the Bretton Woods institutions, whose purpose of establishment is completely different for our developmental path of our country. Do you have any policies of change that will ensure that this country does not continuously depend on external funding, loans that are crippling our economy, loans that we are continuously at the yoke of external loans? Which policies are you going to depend on them? World Bank, number one, and the IMF, or you are going to change? And in which way are you going to change?
Yes, Nomniee.
Let me start with Honorable Mary Emase's question on, yes, if we make it brief, let me just answer yes, we'll do some equitable distribution of resources. Maybe
that's good enough.
We'll do that.
Yes.
And I think that really answers Kalip Hamisi's question, Honorable Kalip, for Saboti. the Bank of Reconstruction being
sorry,
what it is today, the
point of order, Mr. Speaker. That's how I was answered by the predecessor. I don't want to fall into the same. I just ask, do you have any rationalization program that will ensure not just Saboti, that every part of this country has an equal distribution of ready network, so that Saboti will also benefit?
Thank you, Chair. I was not going to make the 30 days promise to Mheshimiwa, but I was certainly going to, like I said, in respect to the answer to Mary Emase Mheshimiwa, that we'll try to work together to see equitable distribution of resources, look at how to open up this country economically because of ensuring that we need to get the products to market. But more importantly, like I said earlier, what are the alternative funding options? I did make my opening remarks that we are doing our best in energy to get power to get into every corner of this country. And we are using a lot of off-balance sheet we are not getting money from the National Treasury. So to the extent that we today are having an unfunded commitment of about $1 billion, we'll need to sit together to be able to look at the resources that come out of Treasury. Are we going to get it to the Ministry of Roads or State Department of Roads as printed estimates, or are we going to work together to equitably ensure that those printed estimates do cover every part of the country? Mheshimiwa Hamisi, I will really want to be a player in sitting down with all the honorable members to ensure equitable distribution. And like you said, what are the options of funding roads? We'll look at that together, more importantly, to ensure that we don't over-rely on the Bank of Reconstruction after the World War. We do have other options.
Mukami.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. There is a...
Chairman.
Okay. Okay.
Honorable
Okay.
Speaker, a point of
thank you.
information.
Yes,
Honorable Speaker, allow me to solve this issue of chair and the chairman. And if you go to the dictionary, it actually says that one, as a noun, a separate seat for one person. Secondly, as a verb, a person in charge of a meeting.
That I am not a chair. Go on, Mukami.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
These are, Honorable Waziri, there is a concern from the local contractors. They have raised concern about being overlooked in the awarding of contracts in the roads and transport sector, with the preference often shown for foreign contractors. This trade results in the repatriation of earnings. That means those contractors, the foreign contractors we are giving business here, they are not banking that money here in this country. What specific measures would you introduce to encourage the participation of local contractors and ensure they have a fair chance in the contract award process? Additionally, how will these measures help retain money within the country to boost our economy? Thank you.
Meshi, be like your neighbor, one question.
Chairman, I have two questions. One is a very short one because it is an ongoing problem which I've just witnessed in my constituency and other constituencies.
But Chairman, I don't think it's fair. When you say one question, other people are asking two questions.
I'm going to stop her after one.
Thank you,
Chairman. I've seen my colleague here, they have asked two questions. Dawood, Emase, Hamisi, yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, my first question on the LAPSET project. This project has been a milestone from the last regime and even the current regime. And to me, this is a project where can be a game changer in terms of our economy, be it locally or internationally. Billions of shillings have been consumed, be it for compensation and even building of the port. Currently, what is the status in terms of operationalization in the LAPSET corridor? Two, what unique approaches are you going to do to ensure that we fully realize operationalization of this port of Lamu? My second question, on the same breath, do you have any specific programs you intend to employ to ensure that you create employment to our youth? Because this has been a thorn issue. In fact, even His Excellency the President has been talking about it, that we need to have a national conversation and we address the issue of unemployment, especially to our youth. Lastly, but not least, it is on the issue of duplication of road works among 3 entities, the county government, the Kura, and Kera. In most of cases, there are scenarios whereby a road has been built by the county government, Kura is doing some repair and maintenance, Kera is also doing some repair and maintenance, and you don't know which fund it's been lost just in the middle of that. So we need to have classification, a proper classification of roads, so that we know this road belongs to county government, and these other roads belong to, they're under the entity of Kera, Kura, and Kenha. There is a lot of duplication, especially Kura and county government. For Kena, I think it's okay. For Kera, it's somewhat okay, but Kura and county government. Thank you.
Nomniee, you know you are not a minister for roads yet, so you're only giving your futuristic plans if you get there.
Thank you again, Honorable Speaker, Chairman. The question from Mukami regarding LAPSET and the equal opportunities for employment of the youth. You know, Chair, we've done something, Chairman, we've done something in the